everybody. We are joined today by NikkiJay, who created the game Quantum Witch, which is coming out today if you're watching this when the video came out. Um, Nikki, do you want to also joined by Sophia?
Hi.
I didn't forget. All right, cool. Okay, so there's a very interesting story behind this game,
Mhm.
and we've played the game, and I've been enjoying it so far. Um, Give us the elevator pitch for the game real quick.
Oh goodness. Which one? uh,
It's a long
so,
elevator.
oh my goodness, yeah. It needs to be. So the game itself is technically a platformer, but it's not. It's yeah, there are platforms, you jump on them, but you don't really solve puzzles or do any platforming. It's all about the plot. It's about exploration, it's about choice. So instead of a platformer, I call it a plotformer.
I like that.
Mhm.
You go and you explore and you find characters and you listen to their dilemmas and you give advice, or you might help them, or you might decide not to. And you make your choices and you live with the consequences. And there are many, many paths through the game. You should see my planning spreadsheet. It is thousands of lines trying to keep
Oh
track of it.
no.
So multiple endings, all with different variations depending on what you've done through the game. And I designed it to it looks like a retro platformer, and then people start playing it, they get to the end, they get their ending, and then they have a look at all the things, the achievements that they didn't get, and go, my goodness, I've only seen like a quarter of what's in this. And then they start to play again, and then they play again. And before they know it, an entire weekend has gone. And I've seen that happen with multiple people. So that's it. It's a game about choice, consequence. The story, the metaphors in each one of the paths through the game is inspired by my own real life experiences of escaping a cult that I was born
Yeah.
into, and where freedom and choice were a big theme of my childhood. It was, you don't have the freedom to make choices for yourself. You have to listen to men telling you what you should choose. Never sat right with me. I mean, I'm wearing the uniform. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I've never been a fan myself. Yeah, so escaping a cult.
Yeah.
How speak as much or as little about that as you're
Yeah.
Comfortable. But
Oh,
that's a big backstory for this
yes.
game.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Yay, trauma for comedy. It's what I do best. So it was a group um, that presented themselves as a Christian group who were obsessed with the end of the world.
Mm.
Hmm.
Um, it was basically rule by fear. Keep everyone in line by telling them that if you didn't do what they said, then God could come back at any time and kill you in the most horrible ways possible. And if you didn't abide by their rules, they would kick you out. And if you got kicked out, God would kill you in the most horrible ways possible. But they also forbade like having friends and a social structure outside of the group.
Hmm.
So if you got kicked out, that was it. You were totally, utterly alone. And that was their way of control, because if you had no one and you'd been conditioned since birth to believe that everybody who wasn't in the group was evil and controlled by the devil, the only way that you've got, the only choice you have is to go back to the group. And so it's just pure coercive control 24 hours a day.
Hmm.
I escaped into video games. That was how I coped. I started playing on the old 8-bit microcomputers, which were popular over here. And they came with a big, thick manual which taught me how to program. So I used to do stupid little text adventures for me and my siblings to play, to just have some escapism. My parents
Hmm.
didn't really understand computers. They thought they were just kids' toys. They didn't realize the power that they were a creative medium. Um, So I got away with a lot in computers. Lots of computer games that they just saw as, oh, beepy bloop kid's toy, not going to pay any attention to it.
Mm.
And there I was chopping off heads and doing all kinds of stuff that they wouldn't appreciate. um,
Wow.
yeah, it was just ruled by fear for my entire childhood until it came to a head. Probably when I was about 18, 19, where when, do you remember when I was 18, my parents caught me with my girlfriend, and it, that didn't go well. They kind of didn't know how to react. So it was kind of just swept under the table. Just don't mention it anymore. Let's not talk about it anymore. But when as I got a little bit older, I think I was just on the cusp of being 19. There was a big family event, and it turned violent. And basically everybody had to get away from my father.
Mm.
So my mum, my siblings went one way. I was like, I am done with this. I'm not going to put up with being told that I can't be who I am any longer. And as cliche as it sounds, a backpack full of clothes and an acoustic guitar. And
Oh
I
my
went,
God. I love that.
Yeah.
and yeah, I was homeless for a while, just sofa surfing
Mm.
on friends that I'd managed to make outside the group because I got myself a job in a video game shop,
Oh,
and met people, and we bonded over Mario Kart on the Nintendo. And I'm just going to say Nintendo because I don't know whether you say Famicom or SNES. It's SNES. That's how you say it. So thankfully, I'd kind of built a bridge to get out. But even so, I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night. And frequently I just found myself with nowhere to sleep.
but
And
video
that
games were literally were the lifeline.
absolutely. If I hadn't had video games, I probably would not be here.
Wow.
And
Were they restrictive over like other type of media, like film or
oh yeah,
music? Yeah.
um, yeah, I didn't really listen to music until I was 15, 16.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was all just the group's music. They had these pre-recorded tapes that you're supposed to listen to and sing along to with their songs. So I didn't really discover music until Nevermind. That was my
Wow.
first album, and just like, I like this. This is awesome. This is angry and
Yeah.
shouting God is gay, and
Yeah, decidedly
that's
not
great.
Christian. Yeah.
So yeah, just listening to it through headphones and not letting my parents see there was a naughty word in one of the songs.
Mm.
But yeah, more seriously, if that had been found out, everything would have been taken away. Everything would have been destroyed. I'm not anti-religion. A lot of people listening to this might think, oh, okay, here we go.
I have
Another
that
militant
problem too.
atheist.
People think that of me as well.
Yeah, it's like I'm all for freedom of religion because that
Yeah,
entails freedom from religion.
Right. And you didn't
exactly.
have any
Yeah.
freedom.
I didn't
So
have any
it
freedom.
wasn't religion, really. It was just,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's the difference between a religion and a cult is how they treat you when you leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's very interesting also because I think about how I think a lot of representation in media is American cults, and while obviously there are some similarities in a lot of it, I think about video games and like, do you feel like there's a disparity? Like there's not really a lot of like I think cults in video games and oftentimes you get like, I don't know, like Far Cry, like you get very like stylized, not pretty far from reality. They're
Yeah,
just a hurdle kind of representation.
the way that I classify what's a cult and what's religion. So religion's just a system of spirituality, whatever spirituality might mean.
Mm.
I've come to the conclusion that I don't really know what that means. Because everybody describes it differently, and everyone with their different system describes spirituality as the system that they practice. And so to get a definition of what that is really difficult. But cults always practice I would say like 4 different types of control. It's behavioral control. This is called the bite model. Dr. Stephen Hassan came up with this when he was helping people leave the Mormons. There's behavioral control. So what you are and what you're not allowed to do. So are you allowed to go to therapy? Are you allowed certain medical treatments? This particular group doesn't allow certain medical treatments. So I saw people die because they refused medical treatments. Like one of my friends, one of the few friends I had in the group who's my age, died because they refused medical treatments.
Ugh.
Um, yeah. And then I made a video again about it. It's wonderful. So behavioral control, there's information control. It's, the group's information is true and good. Even when that changes, even when it contradicts what they used to say, it is still true and good, and they've always been right. And everything outside the group, well, that's evil, and that's lies. There's thought control, literally thought crime. You mustn't think these things because it's bad for your spirituality. It's a sin or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's emotional control. They will tell you how to feel about things. And that's a phrase which comes up a lot in their publications, is how should we feel about X? Well, when we look at X, we should feel this way. And they drum it into you, and eventually you do start to feel that way because of what they're installing in you. So that's the bite model: behavior, information, thought, and emotion. It's in the end what they're trying to do is take the personality you've got, get rid of it, deconstruct it, and install the personality they want you to have. And this particular group calls it putting on the new personality. And they actually say, yes, we do this. We don't want you to have that old personality because it's evil and corrupted by the devil and it's sinful. We want you to have the personality God says you should have. So they don't want you to be a separate thinking agent. They just want you to think and feel and process what they say. So what I did with the game, because humour has always been my defence mechanism.
Yeah.
You might have picked up on that, I don't know. Maybe. Is I kind of took the most absurd aspects of it and turned the saturation up to maximum and made them characters in the game and situations in the game. So
I really appreciated that, actually. Like, there are so many little jokes and so many little things. Like, my writing partner, who I write screenplays with, he had been writing a book about cults, and his methodology for study was to just join cults and see what happens, which is insane.
Yeah.
But we were coming up with, or he was saying, like, what are the common threads of cults? And like the first thing he said is, they will always and repeatedly, somewhere pretty early in the interaction, sometimes even printed on the wall, they will literally say, don't worry, this is not a cult. And in the game, very quickly, you meet a group of people who repeatedly says, oh, this is not a cult.
not a cult.
Yeah. And like, people might think that that's just being cute, but that's what cults do. They literally just say, oh, don't worry, this is not a cult. I know this sounds culty, but it's not a cult. And it's like, that's real. Like, that's crazy.
I mean, there were a few bits in the game where I thought, maybe people who aren't familiar with these types of groups will learn something from this.
Yeah.
There's a bit where Ren ends up in a completely dark cave, and all you can see is her speech bubble saying, if a group tells you, it has to tell you that they're not a cult. Maybe they are a cult.
Probably a cult. Yeah. The warning bells are correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is an artifact you collect in the game which mimics the type of language that this group uses to explain why they're not a cult, and you can go read it in the inventory. And I've had a couple of people message me saying, I've just played your demo and I think we grew up in the same group.
Oh.
Wow.
Because they saw the Shadies and like, I know who that is.
Oh my God.
Wow. You kind of briefly talked about it, but obviously there are a lot of like little nods in the game to other games like Tomb Raider, and like were they, what's the like backstory of those? Were they some of the games that like you played during this time?
Yeah. So the Mario games I always loved. Yeah, Mario Kart was one of my favorites. Super Mario World. was fantastic. I just loved
Those
it.
are good ones.
Yeah. um, yeah, the original Pac-Man as well. I enjoyed that. My daughter
I loved
loves
Pac-Man
that.
in your game. The like
Oh,
the
Yeah.
legally
that's
distinct
just
Pac-Man.
disturbing.
try
Just
to
like,
try to give you some
oh,
pills.
oh
Hmm.
my goodness.
Very good.
It's like Pac-Man, but the instructions said do not overinflate, and she didn't
Mhm.
read them.
Hmm.
And Laura T. Jungle. Yeah,
Yeah,
all
the Tomb Raider.
similar to but legally distinct from
Legally
other
distinct,
video.
yeah. I really I laughed at the joke about are you supposed to cut the black outline off the fruit before you eat it or
Yeah.
on the Pac-Man fruits? I like all the little meta jokes about the style of the game, the art style and like
Mhm.
the kind of game that it is, like
Yeah.
characters hitting their head on the top of the screen or whatever and like uh or being like what did the warrior lady say like she's the most high resolution character
Mm,
or whatever and like all those little bits I think are very funny.
Hmm.
yeah,
What inspired that? Yeah, and the art style and all that.
it's the only thing I could draw.
Well, that's a good way to do it then.
You're a solo developer, so obviously you're taking on
Mm,
a lot of roles.
yeah,
Um, Tell us a bit about that process, because obviously that seems like a lot of work.
it is. It's one of the reasons I chose like a low res art style.
Mm.
For a couple of, I mean, when I started this, I couldn't draw a convincing stick figure. Um, and so I just took some courses online, learned about color theory, studied some other games, to see
I think
how
the game
they
looks
did
great,
things.
so good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
That just means a lot. Big inspirations like Celeste,
Yeah.
and Dark Side Detective. I loved Dark Side Detective's art style because there's so much detail in it, but there isn't. It's
Yeah.
all kind of suggested detail. And I thought, I can do that. I can kind of suggest there's a shape to this face without having to draw the face. And I found that I could do that quite well.
Hmm.
And I've had people say, I loved how you did that with Ren. And, when she's laughing and when she's sad, it's kind of suggested that she's doing that. And I'm like, sprite doesn't change. You're projecting that onto her, which is exactly what I wanted you to do.
Yeah.
Um, so the art style was kind of a compromise between being able to actually get to the end of the game and produce it,
Mm.
but also as a kind of like a narrative device as well to hook the player into projecting their own emotions on a blank slate, which I found worked really well. For people who get really involved in the characters that they're playing as, especially when the player has so much agency to choose those characters' fate.
Hmm.
I've seen multiple people cry uh, when they've hurt a character in the game because they just get so invested. But I try to do that all myself. I did get help. I'll be honest, I didn't do absolutely everything myself because it's technically a short game. But it's short in the way that the Stanley Parable is short.
Right.
It's like you can complete the Stanley Parable in 20 minutes,
Right.
but can you?
Just do what you're
It's like that.
told.
It's that replay. It's like, well, now if I go here and make this choice, what's that going to reveal? All the different paths kind of exist at the same time. So no matter what path you go down, you get a complete, satisfying story by the end, but you haven't got all your questions answered. And so you want to go back and find, well, why did that character do that? And this character who seems to be comic relief, just there for a hint system, are they really comic relief? Is there something more sinister about them?
Right.
And you end up finding a lot more about the lore. And by the time you've played it through like 3 or 4 times and discovered who everyone is, then it leads things up and for a sequel.
Mm.
And then you go, okay, what's outside this village? So if that's what's going on inside and with this other character in this other dimension, what's the rest of the world doing? And that was the part of the game that probably took me the most difficulty
Mhm.
is I had all these story beats marked out and I knew how they all related, but I could not write to save my life. I could not hook them together. So it happened that one of my friends was a BAFTA nominated writer. It's always helpful to have when you want to
Yeah,
write.
it's good to have one of those around.
And um, so I hired him to come on and do a script treatment and show me how to do this.
Mm.
And I kind of just absorbed some of his skill by osmosis and ended up doing these multiple intertwining storylines that all existed at the same time. But if you only picked out one, then it was still a coherent, satisfying storyline. That took, I would say, about 18 months to perfect.
Mm.
Just writing the script. And the script's around 32,000 words.
Wow.
Which you wouldn't think playing through the first time.
Right, yeah. But it
But
makes
then
sense because I'm talking to characters and I'm like, like you said, it seems like innocuous enough, but then you're like, wait, that was a weird thing to say. Like, why did you
Yeah.
say that? Like,
yeah.
wait a minute. Or like characters being like, oh, don't go in there. And it's like, okay, why? Because nefarious reasons or because of this or that? Also, I love that everyone's a lesbian. Just the lesbians,
Well,
witches, and British comedy. This is speaking my language.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's the first rule of writing, isn't it? Write what you know. And
The first rule of writing is lesbians only in my in my
Yeah.
library.
so yeah, I mean that's a big thing. What I wanted to do was like just simply natural queer representation.
Mm.
Yeah.
So do you find like there's a few games that get this right? I think Overwatch does it really well. With queer characters because they are fully rounded characters. They are not there to just spout cliches and be a trope.
Yeah.
Um, so I just took my own family as an example, where, yeah, I'm married, my wife's bi, my daughter
Same.
is a furry, sorry, scaly. I've got to get it right.
Oh.
Um, so we're all of some flavour of queer. So I just thought we'll expand that out to an entire village and then have them rebel against God. I've got a lot of
Like you
source
do.
material.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a wonderful lesson there about like because there's a lot of talk about solo development and a lot of people are trying to get into it. It seems like a valuable lesson to kind of like say this is my strength in what I do and like for you it was like I want this narrative to be told. And so the art style is what I can as long as I can do it. Regardless of what it looks like, if it looks a specific way or not, the most important part is getting the story out. And like you said, kind of how games are a little bit underrated when it comes to you can tell some very impactful stories, and a lot of people who are not in the games industry or play video games think that they are just little toys and they are just
Yeah, yeah.
stories that don't matter when in fact there are a lot of games that can actually change people's lives.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a huge untapped area of video games, taking them seriously as a storytelling medium. And that's why yeah, I mean a few friends sat around and Plotformer came out. Yeah, this is give the player some real agency, get them attached to the story, but tell a story that means something.
Mhm.
It's not about killing waves of enemies, it's about choices and people and personalities and freedom and real world issues, but also dancing skeletons, because that's good too.
Do you have like anything you would like to say to maybe someone out there who might be in the same situation as you were?
Apart from by Quantum Witch, and I mean the message that I really wanted to get over from the game and doing interviews like this is that it's possible to get out.
Mm.
It really is. Don't do it the way I did though, because I just decided, right, that's it. This is who I am, and I'm off, with no real plan. Start planning, even if you've got to suffer through a few years. Have a plan in process so that you've got somewhere to go. Get a backup social structure, make friends, no matter what the group tells you, no matter how much oppression you are under, because this isn't just isolated to these extremist groups. There's so much religious oppression. In fact, makes me think the Steph Sterling, she wrote one of the chapters of the game. She wasn't meant to. She was meant to write 4 scenes. And she got so into the lore, she came back with an entire chapter. And she is extra. She just goes the extra mile. She's fantastic. But it just read as if I'd written it. Because the shared themes of religious oppression from a queer point of view, there was so much shared experience. In those situations as well, the same advice applies. Have an exit strategy. Know where you're going to go. Put that plan into action and concentrate on that plan every time it feels hopeless. Every time that the group tells you that you're worthless, that you're a sinner, that God's going to kill you, know that you've got that plan going.
Yeah.
Mm.
And if that God really was there wanting to stop you, he could, but he's not.
Right.
Because your plan and being in progress shows that you have worth, you are valuable, and there are more people out there that will help you than you realize. There is hope. You can do it. I'm living proof. That's my message.
I
That's a
love
lovely
that.
message.
Well, I don't think we're going to top that.
No, no, that's perfect.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
speaking with us.
Mm.
And yeah, buy Quantum Witch. It's out. And it's really fun and it's cool.
Yay!
I gotta say, it's like good Zelda 2 kind of. It's like
Oh,
weirdly,
oh, that's high praise.
maybe
Yeah.
just because it's like the scale of it looks kind of like that in
Yeah.
my mind. I don't know. Yeah, I really like it.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you so much. Anything else you wanted to say before we cap it off?
No, just thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been a delight.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Check out patreon.com/easyallies. And we will see you again later. Okay.